going to be telling you a mortifying story. Very mortifying. I haven't really told this story very often because it's so incredibly mortifying, but it's the story that changed so much in my life, and I had a lot of regret because of this. So I'm going to tell this story in hopes of helping other people not have this life-changing event happen to them if they're thinking of doing it. So I had my first daughter when I was 21, and I had a hard time breastfeeding, but after a few months, I got a pretty bad mastitis infection, and I had like a D-size chest before I had her, and then after that mastitis infection, the right side shrunk. And I used to joke with my sisters that this side is normal and this side feels like I have a sock with rocks in it. So I was so lopsided. And I lived with it for years. And I actually had a friend that's like, oh, I use a Dr. Scholl's insert in my bra. I was like, oh, that's kind of smart because it's like gel. She's like, yeah, I just stick it in my bra and then it evens me out after she had kids. So I did that. But I went further and I got a few Dr. Scholl's inserts and ended up like gluing them together and cutting them so it was like the shape of half of an implant. So I would put this in my bra every day to even myself out because after having a baby, I had one about D and one was about an A. So I was like, I'm gonna have to live with this. So I got that Dr. Scholl's insert, carved it out, glued it together, and made the perfect little bra insert for myself, custom made, which is great, and it worked all the time, except when we would go to the pool. And when we'd go to the pool, I still wanted it, and I'm like, it's waterproof, I can use this. So we're swimming, I'm playing with Lily, swimming around, having a great time, and halfway through us playing in the pool, I see these kids throwing around something and playing with it, and I was like, don't care, no notice, just notice that they're throwing something around. A few minutes later, I'm like, oh my gosh, where did my insert go? Oh my gosh. Then I'm looking around for it, and I notice that these children in the pool are throwing my boob. They found my insole, my boob, that I used all the time, and they were tossing it around in the pool. And I needed it back. Like, I needed this back so bad. It had become like a prosthetic. It was my insert. Like, I used it every single day. And I took the time to shape it the way I needed to. So I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know what to do. Do I go get it from them? Like, I'm so mortified. How am I going to explain what it is and why I want it? Why does this lady want this weird thing we found in the pool? So I didn't get it back. We left. And I cried. And I was mortified. And it might not seem super embarrassing to some, but when you have a defect on your body and you find a solution, I compare it to a girlfriend of mine told me she had a missing tooth. So she had an insert that she would pop in and out. And they were camping once and she lost the insert. They were camping with a big group of friends, and so she had to walk around with a missing tooth, and she was mortified. So she was like, I totally relate. If I lost that again, like I would lose it. So that night I told my husband, I'm like, I'm gonna look at reconstructive surgery. I want to get some like reconstructive surgery, whether that's a reduction on this side and a lift on this side or whatever. So we went to a bunch of doctors, went to a bunch of surgeons, and had probably 4 consultations to get reconstructive breast surgery. And of course, all of them recommend an implant. You should just get an implant. Get implants, get implants. I'm like, but this side's perfectly fine. I just need it in this side. They're like, well, you wouldn't want to get an implant just on one side. That's silly. I'm like, but this one's perfectly normal. Like, I like this one. But regardless, they're like, no, we should do a lift and an implant. So after Lily was about 3 or 4, no, she was 3, I ended up getting implants. And I had chosen silicone implants, or saline implants. And then the day of surgery, the guy was like, surgeon, he's like, hey, we had someone cancel, and this is probably such a gimmick. They probably say this to everyone. But silicone implants, the gummy bear, they're supposed to be safe. Gummy bear implants are like $1,500 more. So I was like, it seems like a lot of chemicals. I just don't know about it. Like, no, it's perfectly safe. And even if it ruptures, look, he had a cut open silicone implant in the office and he squeezes it and it bulges out and then it goes back into the shell. He's like, no, see, perfectly safe implants. And he's like, because someone canceled, we can give you the implants for only $500 instead of $1,500. So I was like, oh my gosh, my husband was working that day. He was going to pick me up after surgery. But I was like, I don't know. Like, I'm already stressed out going into surgery. Don't know what I should do. And I'm like, all right, fine. Yeah, do the silicone implants. That was a fatal mistake for me. Not fatal, almost fatal mistake for me. He hands me all this paperwork, has me sign it. I don't know what's what, but apparently there's like additional paperwork you have to sign if you get silicone implants, because in 2012, they started noticing that women with silicone implants, this specific type, I found out later, were getting lymphoma from the implants. I was not told that. That was not disclosed to me. I was already kind of nervous about it. So get the implants. Everything seems normal. I used to be incredibly healthy. I used to go rock climbing, used to go dirt biking, used to go hiking, like fishing. I was an outdoor girl, super healthy. And about a year after I got them, I started getting weird rashes. I started having weird sleep disturbances. I started feeling like I was just sore all the time, like I would like after you work out. Just one thing after the next. I started having neurological issues. So many things started popping up. And about 18 months in, I started going to doctors. I'm like, what is going on with me? This is not me. I'm usually so healthy. Didn't even cross my mind to think about the implants. And then a couple years go by, getting worse and worse. Like, finally, then I get pregnant with Quinn. And in this time, from Lily to Quinn, I had 5 miscarriages. I really wanted another kid. And we kept miscarrying. I had a D&C where I carried for quite a while, 14 weeks. I had to have surgery to get everything cleaned out. Super, super sad. Really knocked me off my game for a few months. It was so sad. So kept trying, getting pregnant, losing them, getting pregnant, losing them. And then I got pregnant with Quinn, my youngest. She's 9 now. And I was so sick during that pregnancy. Unbelievably sick. And I was getting sicker and sicker and sicker. And I had her. By the time she was 3 months old, I was so unbelievably ill that I spent most of my days in the recliner. I was working from home. I had 2 little Etsy stores and I was trying my best to keep up with those. I loved doing it. I've always been an entrepreneur, and I would just sit in that chair and make tutus and sew baby costumes. And finally, one day, I was on the phone and I was upstairs in the house and I was carrying Quinn downstairs, and I passed out and woke up at the bottom of the stairs with Quinn on my chest. And then I knew, like, I cannot keep doing whatever this is. I don't know what's wrong with me, but I'm not okay. That's so funny. I'm not okay. And so I spent the next couple nights up all night researching, just Googling. And I finally found this page. It was called Breast Implants and Healing by Nicole. Found it on Google. It was a Facebook page. It got on there. There was 1,800 women on there at the time. I'd have to look now. I know there's a couple 100,000 on there now. But at the time, there was 1,800 women on this page. And every single one of them was describing what I was dealing with. Headaches, crazy food allergies, head-to-toe rashes, body aches, brain fog, memory loss, weakness, just general pain all over, widespread pain. So many weird things. Hashimoto's, like all these things that I felt I could relate to. I'm like, oh my gosh, they're describing every single one of my symptoms. And I was like, I cannot believe it. Like the shock and horror and embarrassment and shame to feel like, oh my gosh, I've done this to myself through implants. It was horrifyingly sad and terrible. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm not the person who's just gonna like not do anything about it. So I jump into this implant group and I'm researching, I'm posting, I'm talking to all these women, and it like became my job figuring out what to do about this, how to get them out. Is there a safe way to get them out? And it turns out that there is, but it's very expensive, twice as much as the surgery to get them in. It's called a en-bloc total capsulectomy, where anyone who gets implants, whether they react to them badly like I did or not, your body creates a capsule around the implant. It walls it off from the outside of your body, or from the inside of your body. So get them over the muscle, under the muscle, doesn't matter. You get implants, your body is going to create a capsule around that implant, which is an autoimmune disease in itself. That's why a lot of women have a lot of inflammation, is your body is spending all this time walling off the implant from your body. So if you look on YouTube and you look up implant removal, most of them will come out like if they get an en-bloc. Most of the time when people get their implants removed, they just take it out and put a new one in. That's not how you were supposed to do it. You need to surgically remove and separate that scar capsule from the whole inside of your body, which is very rough and abrasive and a very serious surgery to do that. But most doctors just pop them in, pop them out, like you're good, new boobs, yay. Well, I knew I wasn't going to get them replaced because they were making me sick. So I had to research doctors, and at the time, there were very, very few doctors doing this en-bloc total capsulectomy, where they take the entire scar capsule and dissect it from all around your body where it's already adhered, and take the scar capsule and the implant out. So I finally find a few doctors. There's one in California, there's one in Florida, there's one in North Carolina that were doing it, and the women in this page were going to these doctors. They were booked out for months, and I was so ill. This is such a dark time in my life. It's such a dark time in my life, I hardly even remember my daughters. We went to Disneyland once during this time, and I don't remember them being there, really, because I was so depressed and so sick. So, research for 3 months, and I finally have this woman, her name was Hope. She travels all around the world. She has a military husband, and they happen to find a really good doctor in Costa Rica. His name is Dr. Urzola. And so she's like, I found this doctor. He studied he did his residency in Costa Rica, and then he studied in France doing reconstructive surgery and plastic surgery. So for cancer patients, so he's got a lot of practice in making you look good. So she posts her before and afters on this Facebook page. And then by the time I find him, she's already home, and two other women have already gone to see him as well. And there's a place called Chatica Ranch in Costa Rica where you get surgeries done, and then you go to this ranch in the wild jungle. And it's beautiful. They have all these little casitas, and they have nurses on staff, and they take you to and from your doctor's appointments. They cook your food, and it's good for you food. And they bring you your medications. And I was like, I have to go see him. I'm going to go to Costa Rica to get my implants out. And at the time, my husband ex-husband now, had just started a new job. And I had a 6-year-old and a 6-month-old. And I was like, I have to go do this. And I need the people in my life to stay and watch my daughters. So the thing was, you can't go do the surgery unless you stay there at least 21 days. You have to get there, have the surgery, and you need to recover, because you're not supposed to fly after that big of a surgery, especially, by yourself. So I had to stay there by myself. I was there for 27 days healing. And that was one of the most transformative, unbelievable times for me in my life. And any woman listening could probably relate to our breasts being a big part of our identity and who we are. And knowing that I was going through the surgery, not knowing how I was going to turn out, healing by myself. It was a really big surgery. And I had some complications while I was there by myself. They don't really do pain meds. They do anti-inflammatory meds, but they don't medicate people like they do in the United States. There's not tons of Percocet and Vicodin and all of that. So I'm just healing by myself and healing emotionally a lot as well. I had already been through quite a lot at that age, to have that kind of time to heal away from anybody. And really, all I had was social media on this Facebook page, this women in this Facebook page, checking on me every day, updating them. And another girl, Amanda, she has a beautiful Instagram page, the Roland Boyles. They were traveling by RV. Her husband works on a ship, and then they get 3 weeks together, 3 weeks off. She was there at the time, and we became super good friends. And it was just a crazy experience. I actually ended up getting a mouse in my little casita that I was trying to get out by myself while I was healing, and it was just a funny story. But finally get home, and through all this, I had all of my implant stuff sent to pathology to see, what is in there. Because when you get your implants out, oh, I didn't tell you the worst part. One of them came out in the scar capsule, totally sealed, encapsulated, so that nothing spills out when they do the surgery. And that's the benefit of doing an en bloc, is to take the entire scar capsule out intact with the implant in it. When they cut it open, there was a bunch of fluid. And the other side, when they got in there, this side had completely ruptured, and sent silicone up into my armpit, down around my back. It was down into my ribs. And to get the scar capsule out, he had to cut away part of, 75% of my pectoral major was necrotic, which means it's dead. And it was adhered to my rib. So I think I've posted this video before, but I have a big dent that you can't really see it unless I'm really thin. And then I have lumps of silicone that have gathered. He tried to get a lot of it out. I was under for 7 hours. He used a cannula, which is what you'd use for liposuction, to suck out the tissue that was entrenched in silicone into my armpit. He needed to remove 2 lymph nodes, but he said if he removed the muscle and the lymph nodes, I probably would lose some function in my arm. So he left the lymph nodes that I still have. And then after years of healing, some of that silicone has gathered together, and now I have lumps that I can move all around my chest. And they come out when I'm thin, they come out in a swimsuit, and I have to push them back in, and it's a horrifying reality that I deal with. But when he got in there, he started filming because he was so horrified, and he filmed most of the surgery. And there's video of him just pulling slime out of my chest. And after surgery, I'm like, they told me that these would stay intact. They showed me an implant, and he's like, that's a gimmick. That's to make you feel like it's safe. He's like, if these rupture, think about leaving a pack of gummy bears in your hot car. They melt. And your body is 100 degrees, 98 degrees all of the time. So for a few years, having that in your body, they melt. And if they break, they leak. So it leaked all over my body, and that's why I was so ill. But this side, even though it was completely intact, I have the implant. I should probably go grab it right now. Still have the implant. It's fully intact, and it was a 330cc implant. And when he measured it, it was a 270cc implant. So where is that silicone? They tell us that it doesn't migrate. They tell you the silicone doesn't migrate. It stays in there, but it's called gel bleed, and it bleeds out. So this silicone implant that is still intact, that was taken out intact inside the scar capsule, is missing a lot of cc's of silicone. And sadly, one of the women in the implant group passed away. She had lymphoma, and her husband was still very active in the page, and he had her body autopsied. And he paid for it. He wanted to know, what caused my wife's death. And they found silicone in her brain, in every single organ, all of her muscle tissue. And that made a lot of sense, because I was missing 60 cc's from an implant that was completely intact. And so besides the intact one, I had this one leak everywhere. There's still silicone in my body. But everything was sent to pathology. It took a while, and I think it was 3 or 4 days after I got home, finally back to Arizona, doing fairly well. I actually liked the way I looked, which was a huge blessing. The doctor was incredible, amazing. I have big scars from here all the way to the sides, big scars. They don't look too bad anymore. They've calmed down, but that's a tiny price to pay to have my health back. And get the call that he's trying to explain it, and he's saying mastitis, this or that, and words I don't understand. So another doctor finally calls me back a few days later, and he said that I had lymphoma, that I had anaplastic large cell lymphoma, which is a breast implant associated lymphoma. You do not get this lymphoma. It's not created and doesn't even exist outside of it being created by breast implants. And the cancer is found within the fluid that surrounds the implant that is inside the capsule, and that's your body's reaction to trying to wall it off from the toxins and the poison. So that was shocking and scary, but it was okay, because 99% of cases, and there hadn't been very many documented at that time. 99% of cases, once you remove the seroma fluid, the cancer is healed. So that was a huge blessing, and I did start to heal immediately. I started to heal immediately. I started sleeping better in Costa Rica. My joints stopped aching constantly. I didn't feel like if I went to sleep, I wasn't going to wake up. That was a feeling that I had before I got them out, and slept really well, and started healing one by one all these symptoms that I had, the brain fog, the pain, the sleeplessness, the rashes. All of a sudden I had no more food allergies. I was super lactose intolerant. I was super gluten intolerant. All these things went away after I got my implants out, which is a huge, huge relief. So I started healing and doing all kinds of IV treatments. I did raw veganism for quite a few months because I'm like, if there is a chance that this doesn't go away. I actually researched the Gerson therapy, which is a pH balanced, your bad cells can't grow when you're that pH balanced. And so I did all that to try to heal for a few months after I got home, and every checkup had been great after that. So I was healing. Everything's great. And in 2019, October, I was actually getting ready for Quinn's birthday party. I had a heart attack, a pretty massive heart attack. And I've had 3 since. And no one could tell me why. I had 2 angiograms to go put in stents, and there was no blockages during the heart attacks. And the best they can come up with was broken heart syndrome, which made sense at the time, or a vasospasming issue where my blood vessels just contract and don't let up, and it causes a heart attack, but there's no blood clot or blockage. And I had been really good for quite a while. Brandon and I got engaged in January of last year, and in February I wound up in the hospital again with what they thought was a heart attack. And that's when you can tell by the EKGs, by the ST elevation in your chart, in your EKG, and then also if troponin is released in your blood, which is a enzyme that happens when your heart has a heart attack. And so since February of last year, I've been really, really good. I've been switching out most of my products, one by one. It takes time. And if you guys are trying to go more natural, be easy on yourselves, because it does take time to switch out all the things, especially after you learn all the toxic stuff that we're dealing with and using. So I still, I use some of these makeups and powders, but I did switch all my skincare to natural, good for you products. And the benefit is my skin looks amazing compared to what it did before I started using it. But switching out all my products, that's helping. Taking lots of different really good for me supplements has helped. But the story all began with losing my little Dr. Scholl insert at the pool and watching kids play with it, and then being so insecure that I had to do something about it. But I did a podcast episode on the heart attacks. I did a podcast episode on implant illness. But it's something that not a lot of people talk about, and I think it's because when women get implants, it's because there's a reason. There's either an insecurity or a deformity or a cancer or something. And that's why a lot of women get implants. And not always. Maybe it's just, I want bigger boobs. But I don't think a lot of us are warned at what can happen. And even if we do start noticing some symptoms, it can be incredibly difficult to admit to ourselves that that might be the case. Because if it is, what's the option? Removal. And that can cause a lot of the same insecurities that you got the implants in the first place. It's a difficult situation. And I like talking about it because since getting my implants out and being so active in that implant illness page, Breast Implant Illness and Healing by Nicole, I haven't actually been on that page in about a year. But I used to post before and afters so women could have some assurances that they could possibly turn out looking good, if not better than before. But since getting mine out, I have helped walk through, encourage, coach, give information to 32 other women who have gotten their implants out. And every single one of them has gotten better. So it's important to talk about, even though it's uncomfortable and it's vulnerable and embarrassing. But some people will react terribly to implants. And I dealt with implant illness and sickness for 4 years before I put it together. And I had been to so many doctors. Not a single one of them said, hey, maybe it's your implants. Not one. So it's important to be open about it for me, because I have been put through quite a few difficult things in my life. But every time something horrific has happened to me, someone somehow comes into my life that needs help with basically what I've been through. And it's a beautiful blessing for me to turn the hard parts of my life, or the things that almost broke me, into helpful moments for other people. And that is why I started my podcast, Your Breakthrough Podcast. You can watch it or listen to it on any of the podcast stream, anywhere you get your podcasts, you can listen to it. And I've only done 8 episodes, but they're good episodes. And a lot of my story about all this is in there, plus all the other things. But if you are someone who's dealing with hardship, I hope that you can eventually find the blessing in it. Because with most hard things that we go through, there's usually a blessing in it, even if we can't see it at the time. And something that I like to think about is that sometimes tragedy can become comedy with time, or at least something beautiful can come out of it if you can pick yourself up and learn from it, no matter what kind of tragedy that is. So that is my embarrassing story about breast implant illness and the possible cause of heart attacks that have gone unexplained because of all that. You know, when you do something like that to your body and you have that kind of toxic spill inside your body, who knows what the fallout is later. And I still deal with daily pain. I still deal with a lot of issues. I still deal with head to toe rashes now and then from different kinds of products, and I never know when it's going to happen. I deal with a lot of that, and I think a lot of it comes from, you know, having a huge toxic spill of implant or silicone into my body for years and not knowing it. So if you deal with weird symptoms and you have implants, you can possibly look into that and see if that could be the cause. But I just wanted to share that story so you guys can have some hope and faith that things get better no matter how bad things get. And I love you guys. And that's all for now.